Hemal, welcome to Stories in AI. How are you?
Pretty good, Ganesh. How are you?
I'm good. I'm fantastic. Thanks for joining and thanks for taking the time. I know we're getting near to the holiday season. I want to end it with a bang with some amazing people like you and talk about stories, stories in data and AI. Why don't we get started and get started with your story, your personal story? Talk about your journey, how you got into data, and what you do today, and so forth.
Oh, personal story. Look, I mean, I got into data purely by accident. I guess it's one of the reorgs you happen, and then you're like, okay, you first say yes, and then you say, what exactly is that? Right, and then that's how I
All good things
got
in
started.
life come through that. You first say
Come through
yes, and
accident,
then you go
yeah,
figure it out.
yeah. And I know on the last reorg, my boss said, hey, I want you to run everything data, and I said yes, and then I'm like, okay, what does that mean? Yeah. I mean, I get data. I've been on IT for many, many years, and I do that. But what exactly is that role? So after 2 days, I said, okay, let me just come up with all these options. But let me just ask the boss because she would have, thought about it. And I said, hey, look, uh, like just give me your thoughts, and I can see, hey, if they match up against mine or not. And she's like, no, it's a clean slate of paper. You tell me, what is data? So there we go. But look, I mean, we use all these terms, oil in the industry and all that stuff. Look, it's all true. And I ran that as my last gig when I was part of Dell Digital, which is Dell IT. And then in my last 5 months, I'm doing an incubation on our product management side to actually launch some interesting go-to-market stuff on data. So, in my last many years in IT, I've always been doing data. But my 2 years has been only been data. I'm not doing anything else other than data.
It also is it's an interesting thing. It's like it probably mirrors the evolution of the market too, right? Because IT and information systems was the whole thing, and then the last, maybe a decade or less than a decade is when it has become a mainstay, mainstream function. Even like data is so critical, so important that people like you with deep experience across all of the entire business stack and the IT stack are now asked to go lead data. And Himal, what really fascinates me about your background is you're now in a product or a innovation role, trying to build offerings for Dell Technologies in data and data management. But you have this deep expertise being a chief data officer yourself, leading data initiatives, working with multiple stakeholders on actually enabling them to go do this. So it's really fascinating how you can really bring in a lot of that into this function. So I'm really excited to see what comes out of Dell Technologies and data management. Um,
Oh, thanks. Look, I
well,
mean, one thing which I told the product team, like, hey, look, I mean, it's my first foray into building a product from a go-to-market perspective, but I have been a customer of data, so you cannot BS with me on the exact thing that we would really like to build, right? Because if I can buy it, I'm sure it at least would be a halfway decent product. So.
of course. No, it's fascinating. And so give me a lay of the land. Tell me, where is the enterprise data landscape today? I mean, how do you see the market from your vantage point? Draw from your experiences, draw from what you're seeing today. Give us an overview.
Yeah, look, I'll tell you, and I'll probably give you a view of just my role within IT, where uh, this was day in and day out for me, right? So, look, I mean, on one hand, all the trends and everything that we do, it's all about data sciences, AI. I mean, it's real, right? It's no longer foo-foo. I wish I would have finished my PhD back in the days that says AI, but they were no takers of AI, right? So now they are, right? So but
You're
it's definitely real, right? It's awesome, and at Dell, I mean, we've been seeing a lot of the use cases, from actually vast many years, and it's great that he's actually seeing all these momentum. And look, I mean, this all the surge in the new age companies really is you are what your data is and what you make from that data, right? These are all like, I mean, we have all seen, who the growing up companies are. It's a data era for sure, and I hope that it's not a data decade. It's a lot more, than a decade. So I think from an industry, from a business perspective, those things are a given. I mean, it's a force that you either are in it or you will get eaten up. There is, you don't have a third choice. So, when I see of, maybe in order to do that, like, what do we want to do? We want to build a strong data culture within the organization. We want to build a lot of data stewards. We want to keep our data good. We want to have people getting the right access to data at the right time, at the right place. You want people to do a lot more data science stuff. You want people to build a lot more modeling stuff. You want people to use a lot more of those models in real time. But the most important thing is it is security and privacy. So you can do all that stuff. And in my first few months, when I ran our data org, is it was all about, hey, look, I mean, how do we do a lot more on the business value? How do we do things in real time? But what we realized is, hey, look, I mean, all that are awesome, but it would sound weird, but look, I think for me it is true. They're all nice to haves. The thing that is not nice to have is compliance, security, and privacy. You can not do the others and your business will still be in action. But if you fail to do this, then your business is gone, right? So to me, it's both, right? Hey, look, I mean, as we do all, everything to get more and more value out of data, more on the self-service side, a lot more how do we do stuff. But at the same time, you just cannot ignore the security aspects, the privacy aspects, and all of the compliance stuff, because we saw in the last couple of years, like, in the beginning stages, hey, look, it was nice where we are hearing something called as GDPR. Now it's like, oh, there is GDPR, there is CCPA. Every country is coming up with stuff, and you are bound to protect the data that your customers has put in the trust to you, and that is your number one job. Everything else is number two.
That's fascinating you say that, and I think I would like to also like just play the other side of the argument, right? Wherein if you look at historically the growth for companies like the digitally native companies like the Facebooks and of course Apple and all those guys, and there's a spectrum of how they do their data management, security, and compliance, right? I mean, like Apple really strong on privacy and stuff. Facebook, not so much. I'm going to make a lot more money. So historically, we've seen that. Are we? Our organization isn't it more a risk management measure, right? Depending on what business you're in, right? If you're in a regulated industry, if customers entrust you with very sensitive data, then social, and this thing. Now, all of those, the meanings of all of that data, the type of data is also changing because your social data and social capital is going to become a lot more important and critical in an era of connected individuals in your network than traditional, what we call as a PII, a PHI data. But isn't that a function of that, right? I mean, it depends. If you're in a digitally native business, you're trying to get a business off the ground, and you have to, delight users by collecting data from them and doing. Yes, you have to worry about data privacy, but won't that slow you down in getting to value
Uh,
realization for you and for your customer?
See, it does, but it's not an option. I think if you don't make it as a part of your DNA, you will choose to always say that if I don't this, it will slow me down, right? So I would almost think that, hey, look, I mean, uh, make your culture in a way that you always respect privacy, you protect the data, and in that umbrella, do the fastest possible way to use your data. And I think if that culture is not there, that says, look, I am somebody who wants to download all of the contact data into my machine,
My laptop,
and
yeah.
I just uh, because I really want to get this thing done in 2 hours versus 2.5 hours. I think that's the wrong thing to do. And you can actually do everything very, very fast. Uh, at the same time, ensure security and compliance. You just have to do that hard work first. But if you don't do that hard work first and just have people say, look, I mean, we really want this, we are a growing company. Personally, I don't think that is the right approach. Look, I mean, if you believe in your company, you will grow big. Your customers will love you. With that love will come trust. When the customers trust you with your data, and as you grow big, one loss is all it takes to break that entire trust. So I would probably think embed in your culture to do the things right, because data driven companies usually will do pretty well.
No, it's very, very well point. It's one of those things where when innovation comes through constraints, right? I mean, like, you have to have that constraint. Just treat this need of privacy, security, and compliance as a necessary constraint and not an afterthought after you've done it, right? I mean, I see the advice is very clear. So let me take a step back, Hemal, and let's talk about the future of work and future of enterprise, right? I know you've been Dell is an amazing case study in how, I mean, my spouse works for Dell, so I know that, and I used to work at Dell. Like, Dell didn't miss a beat in going remote and turning into a hybrid workforce, and the employees are happier. I mean, it's just amazing to see. And that obviously did not happen at the height of the pandemic. That was like years and decades in the making, building a culture around it. So, but give me a glimpse of the future of the enterprise, right? I mean, technology, remote work, data everywhere. Where are we going?
Yeah, I mean, look,
Give us a lay of the
all
land.
of the above. All of the above. We are everywhere. Look, I mean, you are in bright and sunny Austin, although I heard it's very, very cold there, this week.
Yes.
So you have a plus and a minus. I'm in Bangalore. I'm only what 8,000 miles away, from you. It was funny when we were in Austin, and I used to live there. You were there. You are at Dell. We didn't see, right? You're like, oh, and now every call that we do, hey, look, I see you. You see me. Although
That's
it's
so
night here.
true.
I mean, although it is actually 75 degrees here, so I should actually say, on that, I do have the edge. But look, I mean, as painful as the last 2 years is and was, some interesting things have happened, right? I mean, it's about work from everywhere. You have my laptop and my phone. That's all I need. I mean, look, but yes, I do need my nice screens and all, and I do like my gaming mouse, because that the dots per inch actually are key. But hey, look, I mean, I can at least be mobile. We have teams everywhere, right? I mean, look, I mean, we always had teams in India, Malaysia, China, Ireland, Brazil, and US. Now we have done a lot more hiring into Bratislava, into Romania. So look, I mean, what this has happened is, we are able to tap into knowledge everywhere, right? So that's awesome. And at times, if you want to, we can come into the office. If we don't want to, we don't really need to come to the office. The same thing has gone into the technology landscape, right? I mean, you are expected that whether I connect to my development tools from India, being in the office, from my Austin home, from Romania, my employees will demand that I have the same experience anywhere in the globe, right? So with that, there is a lot of push on IT to say, hey, look, how can we ensure the same experience no matter where you are, and that will automatically lead to things like the data sprawl. Like, I mean, look, I mean, when you consider that, when you go to the age-old trend of rogue ITs and shadow ITs, right? Then came all our SaaS providers, which said, "Hey, look, I mean, you can actually just come online and we'll sign you up." It was huge, and now with all of the cloud vendors, I think the whole notion of, hey, look, I mean, I have my entire data in one place, that is no longer true in most of the companies, right? Along with all of the people sprawl, along with the technology sprawl, you have the same thing in terms of data sprawl, in which your data will be in hybrid clouds. You will use a number of SaaS applications. You will have your data center, and it actually even becomes more interesting and difficult for data officers and data scientists on how to get their job done, because it takes a lot of effort to pump the data into one place. I mean, it's a hard effort. So if my data is in my multi-cloud, how do I most effectively use it? Do I even know what my data is and where my data is? So it actually starts from, do you even know where your data sets are? But I think the new paradigm of work has clearly opened up interesting issues, if you will, in terms of data management. Because data is in silos, it will be everywhere.
Interesting. No, I want to. So the one other thing is, like, there's there's a little bit of a paradox here, wherein, like, when you have, and I'm asking you because you're Dell, and the world's number one infrastructure company, and the cloud vendors would argue that in a world where it's actually people are going to be increasingly distributed and so forth, you should have a cloud first experience, public cloud first experience, deliver services and not have to worry about where things are. You can scale up infinitely versus no, versus down. And that's the way to go. But whereas in your case, for example, you've proved the opposite of how you cannot miss a beat as an organization using a hybrid approach to go make this happen. Can you explore that a little bit for me? Is it a better idea to be completely all in, all cloud, or is multi-cloud? And I'm also a believer of multi-cloud being the future and not like a single private cloud, a centralized cloud.
Yeah, I think, look, my view is it's a world of hybrid slash multi-cloud, meaning many clouds, including your own data center. I mean, that's the reality. Along with that, you will have SaaS operators, and along with that, I think what we have been talking yet a lot more is people who are third-party providers of data. They will increase, right? So you have no choice, but you'll have a heterogeneous landscape of everybody. And my definition of cloud is not necessarily public cloud, or so it is, are you giving the cloud experience to your stakeholders wherever
Yeah.
and however you do it? As long as you can do that, hey, that's awesome, right? So I think it's a world in which we will have a hybrid cloud. We will have data everywhere, and it's just, hey, look, I mean, how do we as IT practitioners get the best and get the tools right, again with the right security and privacy to ensure that we understand the data, we understand the entire data landscape, and we give the right tools to make the best use of the data wherever it is.
Got it. No, that's so true, and in fact, it actually makes it more. There's this interesting, thought exercise around. If you really think about it, yes, we all talk about, like, I think the Dell paradox, data paradox report talks about 175 zettabytes of data being generated, and there's a lot. It's humans and machines, but still, more of the contextual data is going to come from humans. A lot of the machine data is, as you can have the tools to read it and analyze it, it's easier. The harder data to work with is the human generated data. And by definition, in a remote workplace where people can be working out of anywhere and stuff, the centers of gravity don't exist in one location. Like you said, the data is going to be generated at the edges by all these employees, all these people, all these machines, all these distributor workforces. So you need a holistic strategy to go do it. Diving a little deep on it, right? If you look at the data management for enterprises, if you go through the value chain of, like, just storing data. Back a couple of decades ago, we used to tell people, don't worry about anything, just get Hadoop, store your data, we'll figure out what to do with it, right? To integrating data, I mean, decades and decades of data management practices and ETL and stuff, trying to actually just cobble data together, to using data to derive insights, doing business value generation and so forth, and then consuming it either as data or as insights or some usable fashion. So there's the entire value chain there. And there's probably more, and then you have a security
Mm-hmm.
layer and a compliance layer and
Mm-hmm.
stuff on top of that too. Can you break that down and say, like, what problems are still not solved in that spectrum? What do you see are still the challenges in that space, in that entire value chain?
Look, I mean, I'll and it might be something very similar to still look. I mean, if you generally ask CDOs, tell me, do you know exactly what data do you own? It'll be interesting to see how many people say absolutely yes, right? So because it's in sprawl, and the business units can go into Azure, spin some things up. There are many SaaS vendors. Integrations are all over the place. So I do think, to start with, even things which are not yet solved is, am I able to discover my data? Do I even know exactly what data do I have everywhere? Do I really
Mm.
understand that I have 200 copies of my customer data, of which 80 of them have not even been pinged one last time in the last 5 years, right?
Has been
To have all
updated
those
for years.
insights about, yeah, because we talk about, observability from an infrastructure and an app perspective. The new paradigm is talking about the observability mindset from a data perspective, right? Do you understand where all your data movements are, where all your data sets are? So, there is a very interesting work done by many of the startups in that area. But I think, to me, fundamentally, and it sounds very basic, that, hey, look, I mean, do I know where my data is, I don't think that's solved, right? Then the classic problem of, hey, look, I mean, it takes my data scientists, 70-80% of the time to do my data prep work, where they can actually use that, use a little bit of the time to damn, get their models right and push their models into production, right? So that time could be very, very well used, right? So I think there is some interesting work that has to happen there. I probably do think in terms of AI, Rook, I mean, I still think there is a disconnect between the AI models happening for one-time use versus they becoming mainstream. So, when does AI ops and DevOps become one, right? Because
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
dev, using a particular algorithm of AI is AI ops, right? So I'm like, okay, when does
Right.
this truly become one, right? I mean, and then, your data ops, your DevOps, and your AI ops are actually one. It's just like, hey, look, I mean, how can I be the fastest in terms of
Yeah.
my entire pipeline
It's
to get things done
it's like your evolution of SRE from DevOps, right? I mean, you need a
yeah,
common science, right, that kind of
yeah,
brings it
yeah,
all together.
correct, yeah.
Uh,
So that to me is also very, very interesting. I think the tool sprawl will absolutely continue. But the one thing that I will say that is still there, and I think it's probably one of the challenges that many organizations face. It's not a technical hurdle; it's more of an organizational barrier. Is to, hey, look, I mean, who is the data owner for that particular entity?
hmm.
As easy as it sounds easy. Hey, look, I mean, tell me who's your customer data owner. Oh, it's me. But hold on, you are in sales. Like, do you also own the customer data from a services perspective? Do you own the same data from a marketing perspective? Hey, guess what? We always ignore supply chain. Supply chain is one of the biggest data consumers and providers of all times, right? Hey, how do you use the customer data in the context? So as we think about all these technology things that will always have gaps and will always have to be fixed, sometimes I think us including many of the organizations, we forget the basic thing that do you have the organizational construct of people who are clear owners of those data across the enterprise, and does the enterprise behave in a way that they are owners of the data? So you are not owners only from a namesake side. You are you the true owners, and are you now ensuring, and I'm not trying to go too deep into the data mesh, but are you trying to ensure that everything, the entire entity that you own, it has the right data, it has the right quality? Again, do you have the right security and privacy stuff? You have the right APIs for people to be able to use that data? Do you have the right performance, right? So to me, it is important that you have that first. If you don't do that, you could be awesome in all these technology stuff, but you will still lag way behind in terms of how much data, or how much data maturity your enterprise is actually doing, and how much it is benefiting uh, from data. So look at the organizational construct is easily said, but it's in many orgs is difficult to implement.
And you're hitting on something, that's extremely critical, crucial, right? If you think about it, there is an accountability problem when you live in a world where, like, earlier it used to be very simple, right? You just point to that person and say that person is responsible for that department. Something goes wrong, you know who to call to fix it, right? Or something really bad happens, there is at least a line of accountability and a trace back and saying, these are the steps that happened that make it happen, that made this bad problem happen, and you can reverse it and make sure there's a corrective action in place. Well, when you have this world where you don't even know what your data is, and the data is actually being used to make a lot of decisions across the value chain, who do you point your fingers to? And not in a negative way, saying you need to point fingers at somebody, but it's like, hey, I got a insight that said this customer is amazing. I went to there, and that address is no longer valid. They don't even take my call because the phone number is not updated. I mean, I just wasted the effort. Who has to update that so that the model will work better? That kind of questions. It's actually very, I know it sounds very
And it's a
basic, but you're
basic
exactly
question. It's a
right.
basic question, right? See, because organizations are structured by the business unit functions. So given most of the org, you will have a marketing function, you will have a sales function, right? You will have, IT, HR, those things for sure. You will have a finance function if you are into into manufacturing. You'll have a supply chain logistics. You will have a services support function. Each of them deal with simple things like the customer data, but each one of them deals with things differently. Customers are pissed off with the company that as they go across these different functions, they are treated differently and they are known differently, right? And if some of those easy stuff is fixed, you know what? Then the rest is easier to attain. If you are
Yeah.
the most technologically savvy company using your data tools and all, and you don't have your organizational and your governance construct right, yeah, your tools will
Good
not
luck.
take you very far.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating you say that, and you briefly mentioned or touched upon data mesh, right? I think I'm very encouraged by the concept of actually like how do you really create uh, distributed, fully owned factions of data and treat data like data products, right? I mean, that's the whole essence of something like that. But is that going to exacerbate your data silo problem, or is that going to make it better? Because like
I
one of the
see.
fundamental things.
I think I would rather do that and then see if there is a layer that can just connect all my data. So if I have a pod of customer data which is pristine, that is awesome, right? Because look, I mean, the key things I want is simple things like garbage in, garbage out. I don't want to have anything
Sure.
called as data cleanup. If I remove that word called data cleanup, because hey, everything that I entered in is clean by default. Can you believe how much hours and how much productivity will be saved across all of the companies? Look, I don't have the number. I think it'll be an astronomical number, and think about it. With all that savings that we do, we do some amazing things in data, right? So my view is that, look, if your ownership structure is right, thou shall ensure that in that domain, it's not just the technology needs, which hey, look, I mean, it's running on an awesome platform. It is stable, it is seamless, it can scale. It's fast, it's speed, it is real time
Sure.
stuff. But I have the right set of APIs. But along with that, I have the right data coming in from the source. It is clean from the source. And if I have even say, for example, that 10 puddles of data. One is my customer data, one is my sales data, one is my billing data, one is supply chain data, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
If I have that and they are extremely good, strong APIs, connecting that is an easy problem. See, that I would not even call it as a data silos because look, I mean, they're all there in their own domains, and uh, connecting that is an easier technical problem.
Fair.
Because
Fair. No, it's
otherwise, you will have a marketing data silo, which has part of the data. You will have a supply chain data silo. You'll have a services data silo. You'll have all that stuff by the BU, which makes a customer life really bad.
somebody mentioned this. It's like wonderful how technology evolution. If you really track the history of scientific revolution and technology evolutions, right? We always solve a problem but create the problem, but knowing very well that we will be able to find a solution to the problem we just created. Right? So it's a it's that story here, right? I mean, we're building the data
Let's
mesh.
fix
So
let's fix the bigger problem first. Let's fix the organizational first. If the orgs are done, technology has power. It will be able to solve it. See, culture is difficult. Organizational construct is very, very difficult, right? But if you fix that, technology will be able to solve these things, right? But I think, see, all I'm trying to say is don't ignore the organizational constructs. At times,
sure.
it is even more important. And if you have a little bit of siloed because of your organization or construct, but it's running really well, I would rather solve that.
So explore that a little bit for me. How do you become a data-driven organization that is making decisions based on data? That is, how do you build a data culture so that not just IT, but the entire organization becomes, attuned to making decisions with data, trusting the data, taking care of the data, making sure you're following practices. Lay out for me what makes you a data-driven organization, a good data-driven organization.
Look, I think to me it's simple stuff, right? Simple things. If you are an ops leader, you are going to run everything by the metrics. Just use your tools and do that. Don't depend upon a PowerPoint that some human has looked upon like 30 different spreadsheets and created that, like, because what you are doing is you are changing the definition of your data, right? Simple stuff. Have your KPIs, have your dashboards, have that be exposed to everywhere, have a very clear path how you are doing that, right? If you
Mhm.
start with simple things like that, data is ingrained into your culture. If you are a sales leader, you will immediately know that, hey, look, I mean, oh, geez, that is interesting. I'm actually shipping the same order to the same customer with four different customer IDs. Something is wrong, right?
Yeah.
So I think if you put a little bit more effort to do truly be data driven, it might sound weird to me. That means don't run your reviews on PowerPoint. Like, PowerPoint does not exist. Just shut it down and use your data, use your tools to do that. It actually starts like a thought process. It starts because somebody internally cannot fudge now that says, oh, you know what, these eight are the same, so let me lump this thing into my one PowerPoint line together, right? It exposes. Once it exposes, then you have the incentive to fix it because you are getting yelled at every single time. In order to fix it, if you have a strong organizational construct and an ownership, you will know who to pick to actually fix it, and he or she can easily fix that. Then on top of that, if you have a very, very strong data governance structure, it becomes very easy to implement those things. Then if you have an
Mm.
awesome, not just the technology tools, but technology tools which are very much self-service oriented, right? Because this is not a time in which I have to fill out like a Word document to have, so and so done. If I can
Someone
do
provision
things,
things for you. Yeah.
yeah, if I can do things very easily from a self-service perspective, and the heart of it, again, I'm doing it everything with my culture of security and privacy.
Got it.
It just works itself. Yeah. But it needs to come. Like, do not have somebody change the data into the PowerPoint slides. The minute you see all the poop, you will have no choice, but you'll make sure that your organization fixes it.
It's
Otherwise, it's a lipstick all over the place. Small
that is
things.
so. It's such a nuanced but very valid point, right? When you take data from its original form and you massage it to a story that you wanted to tell in the form of a PowerPoint, you change the definition of that data. You basically change, you associate different meanings, different relationships, and different things. And then whatever you work on to actually run that business is going to be based on that PowerPoint and that definition of the data. Not, and you have the chance of missing the forest for the trees, right? So it's a very nuanced but very
Yeah,
valid point.
see, and to me also, like, one simple thing works. So we are trying to sell our, hey, look, this is how we should do our next generation customer ID and mapping and all that stuff. And
Yeah.
look, I mean, it's a big change. I mean, we have, I can't name how many, but there are a lot of them. I don't want to name how many. We have ton of customer records. We got, look, I mean, at times we got a fair bit of duplicates. We have to be ongoing. So we had this radical new approach on how to approach that customer master problem, right? Uh, and
Hmm.
we went to our ELT member and we said, look, in order to appreciate this, we actually showed the data to him on production that the same he existed 28 times. When he saw that, we had no, it was all done. It was, hey, if I see the pain, guess how much pain my customers would be seeing. It's approved.
That's so true. That's amazing. Himal, this is awesome. I got one last question for you. The role of the chief data officer, it's a really challenging one, right? Because there's two schools of thought, and you kind of laid out your point of view early on, but I want to double click on it. One school of thought is like just focus on protecting, governing, and making sure the data is, like take a not in the right way, but like, take a defensive approach to making sure you protect the data, you secure the data, and you make it compliant. Then there's the other school of thought wherein, hey, the chief data officer, I'm looking at them as a data savior, right? They come in and they monetize my data. They figure out other uses of that data. They figure out what I'm missing and then collect that data and then drive business transformation. It's a really hard job because most, even the folks who actually get into roles thinking they can do part B are pushed into doing part A, and the folks who go into part A saying, "This is what I'm done. I'm a data management person all my life," they're pushed to do the part B. So it's a really tough and really challenging role. What do you see, I mean? Talk about the evolution of the CDO and what role should they
I
have in an organization.
see. I think what you laid out is so true. There are two ends of the pendulum, right? I mean, if you did this really well, if you did the security and privacy really well, people will say you are not a transformative CDO, right? If you do the transformation piece really well, people will be like, you know what, you don't. I mean, look at where we are from a privacy and security perspective. No way, it's the biggest risk in the company, right? So, unfortunately, I think to me the pendulum is not both the sides. My view is that don't view it as a pendulum. Because the minute you see this as two different things, you'll always be at that dichotomy, right? To me, you put security and privacy at the heart of it, right? And look, I mean, the governance that you put on top, make it as a fun governance, right? The governance for me is success is how many people use my data, right? And I will ensure that the way people are using my data internally, it's always with the right security and the right controls, right? If my KPI is solely on, hey, look, how many people are using my data, and my ticket to entry is compliance, and further to that, I say, look, it's not just how many people are using the data. Am I making easy for them to use my data? Am I doing enough self-servicing? Am I incentivizing them to say, no, create more data science models, create more and more repositories. I don't care. Use a lot of it. And look, there is always like a sine wave, right? But you are in that wave in which you encourage people to say, look, I mean, I will architect it in a hardened way that I will put the security and privacy by default, so that you don't have to worry about it. You mistake it, because look, if I give the the problem statement to all these different data users to say, now you all have to worry about security and privacy, I've just lost it. I've already lost the battle. So internally, if I say, look, I mean, the way I design my APIs, the way I design my layers is with those things. I immediately I know what the PII fields are, and my APIs that access that, they don't even send those fields, or they are doing all the masking of those fields, right? So I don't have to worry about the rubric. But if I make the heart of it as more secure, more private, if I make governance a bit more fun about no, governance, the word itself is a shitty word, right? I mean, that's like it almost means you're trying to clause them together,
You're
right?
just
But if you
embracing
do
it.
the opposite, that says, hey, for me, the metric that I really mean is how many people are actually using the data. The more, the merrier, right? And the way you do it is, hey, if you are taking 4 hours to talk to us, I don't even want you to email us, right? Look, I mean, go into our URL and just do a self-service, and then
That's
internally
very
we'll
smart.
ensure that everything. So I think if you fundamentally change that to make it more incentivized for people to use your data, I think you've just flipped it open. So you're not in this rut. And to do that, again, sorry to reiterate, your organization construct and your culture is important, right? So if you're able to do that and have some awesome tools, always that the entire landscape is changing all the time. But if you can keep up with the pace and make your data scientists really happy, have them spend more times in the modeling, make sure that, hey, they are putting everything as a part of your CI/CD process, then you've just changed the entire culture of the organization.
You probably know I'm a reasonable crypto nerd, right? So I'm into decentralization and crypto as well. And one of the fundamental things around crypto that encouraged me, and you're actually calling that out, like we think of governance as a way to protect something. So there is a they versus us scenario in governance, right? Has always been played out. But like in crypto, what you're actually calling out as well is actually it's an incentive alignment problem, right? I mean, yes, there is an element of governance and compliance, but I think if you just align the incentives right to promote the right behavior, the right action, then you're going to have magical results, right? You don't have to literally just have the us versus they kind of a mindset to go making it happen. So I think it's a really beautiful concept. Hemal, this is awesome. Just to recap, like some of the things that really resonated with me, what you said, right? data science and AI is real. It's, you're either in it as an organization, and if you don't, you're going to miss out and you're going to be left far behind, right? There's a lot more data coming. There's already a lot of data. There's a lot more coming. Getting business value from data is important, but keeping compliance, security, and privacy as a part of your DNA to make sure you're doing it, it's a non-negotiable aspect. And delivering that value across delivering value with that across the value chain is critical. And then lastly, you said, for all of this to work, people, organizational constructs, culture will dictate success on it, right? Is that a good summary of the
Yeah,
conversation?
that's a great. And just one more thing: self-service, self-service, self-service.
Self-service. Remove the friction.
Remove the
And
friction.
I'll add the last one that you said, right? Align the incentives, like even for self-service. Like I remember
Mm-hmm.
when I was at Dell back in the day, I still remember we had a public referenceable customer, and I was leading products for those days, like our private cloud software portfolio. And it was a hard problem to get, the server, storage, and networking engineering teams within IT to come together to virtualize something, because they all have their policies and different things. And like I only define storage, and virtual disk policies should behave this way, right? And then networking is a different silo. So I remember at Dell, actually, those days, we launched a software that allowed them to collaborate. And the incentive there was like, look, you want to ensure that your policy in the storage organization is layered upon the virtualization environment. Well, here's your chance to do it, right? And you give them a template, and they actually did that. I think it was a beautiful example of when it was a frontier technology back. This was late 90s and early 2000s. Frontier technology, it's a lot of demystification that needs to happen. And then you bring a canvas together for people to collaborate. You align the incentives for them, and then magic happens,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I
Magic
can
happens,
see the
exactly.
same moment in data and AI right
Yeah,
now.
it's simple actually. Look, I mean, yeah, we can make it very, very complex, but if you align some simple things, organizational get good data in, don't if you remove your data cleansing, remove your PowerPoints, you'll see a change.
I love it. Kill PowerPoints, stop cleaning data, make it clean all the way. I love it. Hey, well, this has been fascinating. How can I have one personal question for you. What is your personal power practice? Do you run? Do you
Personal.
meditate? Do you power practice? How do you, you're like, I talked to you, it's what, 11 o'clock right now, or 10 o'clock, 10 p.m. right now for you. I
Uh-huh.
talked to you early in the morning. I talked to you late in the
Yeah,
night, and you're like always full of energy and ready to
yeah.
go. Has to be a secret there.
Oh no, I like technology. Unfortunately, I shouldn't say that lot of people like it. I actually don't know anything else. I'm horrible at sports. Uh, I I can't play a single sport really well. I don't like reading books. I'm not a typical
I know you like reading
management.
papers, you like technical
I like
technical
reading white
papers.
papers. I can read the ASAM and IEEE all day long, right? Uh, I I like to code. I like to read technical stuff, and because that's the only skill I have, man. I mean, I don't have other skills, unfortunately. So these
Yeah,
things are exciting. These things, by nature of it, are just very, very exciting to me because I'm not good at anything else. So,
no, I think you're being too humble. No, I think you're being too modest, by the way. But I think you're right. It's like it's a self-enforcing thing, right? You do something, you love something so much, and you keep doing it, and doing more of it makes you better at it, and you keep enjoying it more, and it goes in a cycle. So it's fascinating.
mhm.
How can the viewers and listeners get in touch with you, Hemal? How can they find you on the internet?
You can ping me. I actually can we send my mail ID. Look, I'm not very good on the social handles, sorry, but if you can
Sure,
just put my
I will do that.
mail address, it'll be awesome. Yeah, and I would love to hear. And yeah, look, I mean, anything that I can do to help, anything that you want me on behalf of Dell to help you. Look, I mean, I'm mm, very much here. So look, I mean, anything I can do, please
That's awesome.
feel
Hemal,
free
you're
to
gonna
ping
get like a couple of 100,000 emails asking for support for your Dell laptops, and then after that, you'll get a whole bunch of conversations
me. Okay, let's
on
not
data
do
management.
that. Please, please don't ask me for a tech support,
So go
please.
to Dell.com. That's good. Thank you, Hemal. Thanks so much for spending the
Uh,
time. This was a blast. This is fascinating. Thanks for taking the time.
awesome. Thank you so much, Ganesh. Yeah.